Good. Mr. Jerry Hinds. Good for you.
If you want to use it, sorry.
No, don't worry. The first introduction is always going to be formal, and after that, it will just be Jerry.
Okay.
That's the case.
Yeah.
You ready?
Ready? Last thing I'll tell you is that although it's the Association of Comic Artists Singapore, you can start to refer to it as ACAS. That's a very common term that's used around here. If you want. ACAS, ACAS.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But first, we have to be introduced as a formal organization.
Yeah, that's right.
Before I call it ACAS.
Yeah.
ACAS. ACAS, okay.
Yeah, ACAS, that's right. Okay.
You ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay, we'll get a camera for a few seconds and then I will begin. Hi, welcome to the National Korean Stories Online News. I'm Robin Stienberg and welcome to our show again. Today we have a very special guest that I will be introducing you, and that is Mr. Jerry Hinds, who is the president of the Association of Comic Artists in Singapore. The association has established for quite a while right now, and they are making an impact and inroads for comic artists and the like in Southeast Asia. And today we will find out more about the trends and the upcoming impacts, the way technology has evolved in Southeast Asia. Mr. Jerry Hinds, thank you for joining us here at the National Critics' Choice. And a lot of individuals as well as enthusiasts in the field of the comic world are now wondering and trying to find out more about your organization around the world. Because I mean, you guys have been around for a while, for what I understand, and we'd like you to elaborate your existence, how you guys first established, and then where you guys are heading towards right now.
Okay. We were formed in 2005 by a group of about 6 or 7 professional artists. I say professional, they were semi-professional or professional in terms of some of them did graphic design, different aspects of art. But one thing they all had in common was they were all previously published before. So they had done the comic medium to some level before. They say that was back in about 2005. I actually came on board around 2007. And I've been the president since about 2008. And since then, one of the core objectives of the association has always been to publish the work of local enthusiasts. And that entails many things. But to do that, you need to have finance to some degree. So we kind of run the association on a couple of different from a couple of basic standpoints. To subsidize a lot of the publishing, we do a lot of teaching. Okay, and bearing in mind that many members have different tastes, we could be publishing anything. And dare I say, when you're dealing with pure fiction in Singapore, sometimes your sales may not be fantastic. If you're dealing more with reality, these kinds of graphic novels, sequential stories, tend to sell better. But your true comic enthusiast wants to tell a story that's fictional. And we have to support all of the members' dreams. So we edit, make sure artwork is in, anatomies are correct, perspectives are pretty spot on, and of course grammar is accurate. But as long as the story is cohesive, makes sense, we'll support that creator.
Now, you spoke about the support that your association has intended for and still is to help to establish local artists into the market. Now, how does the local government or policies view, such as the National Arts Council and MDA, do they have any programs that would assist your association, and what sort of track record do they require, if any?
Yes, over the last 5 to 10 years, the graphic novel medium, manga, comics, call it what you will, has gained quite a lot of respect, not amongst just the populace, but also the government sector. For example, a few years ago, there's been a couple of initiatives that were supported by the Media Development Authority of Singapore, or MDA, as they're more commonly known. That was referred to as the First Time Writers and Illustrators Publishing Initiative. Now, it started off with just books, but then later came First Time Writers and Illustrators Publishing Initiative, graphic novel section. And we helped formulate the first ever such initiative, and then we actually managed the second one. And from there, each participant was given a grant of $5,000 not the largest sum of money in the world, but certainly went towards helping pay the artists, the writers, and the assistants. And through those efforts, various stories came out that were published internationally. So that's one particular example. Another example, which is supported by the National Arts Council, is they give grants towards graphic novels. Once upon a time, graphic novels, comics, weren't on the radar. But now, you can apply for a grant, a literary grant we call it, and they review it. We actually do review applications ourselves. And from there, an applicant can obtain funds. We've published a number of books with the assistance of the National Arts Council. So yes, things are really heading in the right direction in that way.
Now, you spoke about the direction that the Association of Comic Artists is moving towards alongside with the government policies such as the National Arts Council and the Media Development Authority. Now, what about Southeast Asia? Do you see a change and a support from Southeast Asia as well? And is Southeast Asia ready to embrace?
Yes, I think comics as a medium will always be popular, albeit now more of it is viewed online. But the idea of telling stories with words to staggering pictures, or animated comics, which are now quite a new phenomenon, I think that's here for the long run. And a lot of nations from this part of the world still really have avid comic book following. So yes, it's changing, things evolve. As I mentioned, you get animated comics now, things are online, page formats might change. But by and large, the art form is still pretty strong. And when you talk about traditional comics, it's still pretty strong in Southeast Asia. So Japanese manga is still very popular. Western comics still popular, more with it, albeit, let's say, a slightly more mature audience. But yes, there's still a decent audience out there for all of this kind of material.
Now, are governments in Southeast Asia, I will not say governments, I'm sorry, but agencies in Southeast Asia, are they embarking the same initiative as Singapore? Do you see that happening in like countries like Indonesia, Malaysia?
Yes, I can see it happening. Fortunately for Singapore, it's a small country, but the government's very proactive in many areas. There are some wonderful artists from neighboring countries, and I can see those governments getting involved with it. The same way how they've been involved with animation initiatives, gaming initiatives. It's only a matter of time before graphic novels come onto those governments' radars, and they can pick up some of the help from the government that we're already enjoying here.
Now, what's the percentage growth or the number of artists here in Singapore and Southeast Asia that you have seen back, say, 2005 and today? What's the population growth and enthusiasm like?
Well, that's a very good question. You could say it's good and bad news. The bad news is that, generally speaking, comic sales of print are down. As I mentioned, people view comics online. But the good news is there seems to be more comic book creators now than there could be readers. What I mean by that is there's a lot of art enthusiasts and a lot of writers out there who've dabbled with writing novels, your typical kind of books they've written. Now they're looking at the graphic novel medium. So yes, it's definitely on the increase in terms of skill set. People want to learn this. But of course, the tertiary institutions are far behind this. You have certain very good schools in places like Japan, and America boasts a very prominent one. But to get a diploma or a degree in sequential storytelling, I believe that locally there's one module being taught at the LaSalle School of Art. Recently they've introduced a graphic novel module. But yes, if you look at it from a potential professional perspective, the professional educational institutions haven't caught up yet with the enthusiasm from the populace of the region.
Now, what do you see in the coming next 12 months for your association of comic artists here in Singapore? Are you all going to introduce new initiatives that would that will enhance the interest in the comic book world, such as being a profession or even being an enthusiast?
Certainly. Our classes are growing. Our programs, our curriculum We have a full curriculum from start to finish. All ages. We have basically 4 kinds of syllabus. We've named them petite, which is 6 to 8 years old. Anything below 6 is a bit tough with what we're teaching. Then we have protege, which is 9 to 12. Then we have apprentice, which is 13 and above, and maestro, which is 16 and above. And from these various syllabus that we teach here in our own classroom, we've taken modules to schools and universities and colleges. And these are gaining recognition by government bodies. So the more accepted these curriculums become, the more parents get to know about them, the more like it just becomes a natural part of life. And from that perspective, we expect to see more people being proficient in this art form. How do you write a comic? What's the fundamentals of writing? And of course, what comes along with this are the jobs of assistants, which are very important. We always look at the pictures and the words, but what comes along with that are the assistants, the letterers, the inkers, the people who apply the black ink upon the pencils. You have the page makeup artists. These are jobs that very much require skill sets. And as we spread this knowledge, people will be more print ready, if you like, more publishing ready. So that will give publishers even more choice from out there, the populace. More people will just basically know what to do.
Now let's come back to the opportunities here for professional artists or comic book artists and other skill sets in Singapore and Southeast Asia. At this point of time, is there a regular program or a regular annual conference that will gather these people together to share their knowledge and know-how?
At the moment, in Singapore, there is the Singapore Toys, Games and Comic Convention that just passed a couple of weeks ago. And that brings in a number of foreign speakers and local creators who are quite successful. From there, young enthusiasts can pick up a lot of valuable knowledge. In terms of getting published, it is not easy, as a lot of publishers here don't really dabble in original material of this kind. A few do, including my own proprietorship. And as in anything, when you're trying to perfect an art form, they do need to look outside as well. And as I encourage a lot of students, they have to be prepared to collaborate. For example, if you get a relatively successful writer from Brazil, if a Singaporean artist assists this gentleman or lady, whatever the case might be, they automatically have an audience, and only good things can come from that. So collaborating with people from around the world is one way how we definitely will open the door for other local creators.
Now, is the association able to assist new and upcoming artists as well as proteges, etc., to connect with other great companies like DC Comics, Marvel, Image, or even here in Southeast Asia or even Japan? Is there such an arrangement of collaboration?
We're not directly linked to any such bodies.
But are there any plans for that?
There would be plans for that, certainly. We're more concerned at the moment with making sure that students can draw properly and write properly. But as time progresses and as things evolve, certainly these things will take place. We have certain connections with some very proficient Indonesian artists that when locals collaborate with them, you can see their standard of work immediately improves. When there are government initiatives with certain dignitaries coming from abroad, they do consult us. So to get a person's portfolio in front of DC or Marvel certainly might be easier for us than the average person on the street, yes.
Now, what kind of a vision statement does your association going to embrace, especially the trends and the future right now is at hand? Do you feel that there's a great potential where the West itself will probably even consider relocating some of their skill sets to Singapore?
Yes. What I always say is a comic mind is a fertile mind. First and foremost, to answer your question, is that where I see the association definitely been quite intrinsic in a lot of ways is comic book writers and artists think in my opinion, think in different ways to most creative people. It makes them therefore invaluable to industries such as animation, games, pre-production, and film. As the association grows, and as we've experienced here, more and more of these companies that deal in these mediums actually do come to us. Because there are certain things that comic artists, for example, might see in something that your average illustrator might not actually see that. So that's the first thing. And certainly when you have, if you're good at what you do, any company from any part of the world will look at you. And as you know, we already have artists here who do work with some of the bigger publishers from the West. So yes, if you get, the more people you get like that, there's not a problem at all, I don't think. There's even a couple of locals that work within the Japan manga industry, and that's of a very high standard. Now, if they can make it there, of course, their work is to that standard. So what we're trying to do here is make sure that people are as good as possible to give them those opportunities.
What kind of challenges do you foresee for the next 5 years?
The biggest challenges always are making sure that there is a job at the end of learning something like this. And even if it's not in comic books, your skill is relevant somewhere else. These are always the biggest challenges. It's why here, for example, beyond the comic book teaching, we're going more towards as well concept art, design. You know, you get characters from games, you get environments, set designing. We're having to incorporate that now because even a lot of comics now, it's still comic illustration, but the rendering is closer to painting as opposed to ink and basic color. So these are things that we're having to embrace as well.
Now, what kind of trends, especially the courses that you are introducing and technologies, for your students here in Singapore and Southeast Asia, are they going to be any relevance soon?
They're relevant right now. For example, we teach traditional and digital disciplines. First and foremost, with traditional, we're all used to pencil and paper. Okay, we normally holding these materials from the age of 2, 3 years old. So if you want to teach someone how to draw, it's probably easiest to teach them first on a piece of paper. We also have to explain to students that in the real world, in the real professional world, there's a very strong likelihood somewhere along the line a computer will be involved in what they're doing. Whether it be pencil on paper, scanned, then manipulated in the computer, or it will be penciled straight into the computer. So we're already teaching this, and advertising agencies, graphic design agencies, they're already deploying these techniques. So the more well-versed we get our students in all of these mediums, whether they be 9 years old or 19 years old, they're certainly going to, let's say if they're 9 years old, they will have a head start on their peers when they get to secondary school.
Now, what's the difference between e-comics and print these days? And what kind of future are we going to see? Do you think that e-comics itself will let alone will be animated because people are beginning to see that comics are able to evolve and not just static, but it is able to animate on its own. Do you see that happening?
Yes, I definitely see that happening. If you look at the technology at people's fingers, if you look at the proficiency of some of the online editing, examples that people do in their bedrooms, for example, to start moving your comic panels of this generation today will become quite simple. So I can see more animated comics definitely coming out. Whether or not they will totally replace your conventional looking comic, that might take some time. But they will become more and more popular, yes. And by the same token, will printed comics ever be totally replaced by online comics? To a large extent, yes, but totally, that still will take some time, I believe.
Now, what's the perception between the West and the East so far towards comic books? I mean, you've been here for a while, so you probably have a totally different outlook.
Yes. Well, if we're talking about Singapore specifically, let's say one of the advantages that someone like myself might have had growing up in England is if you're a pretty good illustrator or you're not bad at drawing, you're kind of respected. And you're respected in a way that's different to a person who would be respected, and let's say, for example, if they have a diploma or a degree. But I found here in Singapore that if you can draw, you weren't necessarily respected unless you had the paperwork, and even then, there's a good chance that you wouldn't be respected. And it normally comes from the old adage like, an artist can't earn a living. But now that seems to be changing. There's more, as you can see from this environment where we're at here, at the Goodman Arts Centre. Artists now here are beginning to gain a little bit more respect. So, in answer to your question, yes, being an artist here now, you can command a little bit more respect than you could have, say, 5 years ago, for example.
Well, that's very good. And by the way, Mr. Jerry Hinds, also, what kind of courses would you recommend for those who are starting out their career or wanting to plan their career, or even being a comic book enthusiast, who wants to learn about the art of comics, or even the business of comics? Where can they begin, and how can they begin?
Well, the first thing, probably most obviously, is read comics. Look closely at what's happening. If you're an artist, learn how to draw properly. The two foremost things for any artist, in my opinion, is anatomy, how to draw a person, and perspective, how to draw a room or buildings in relativity to each other. These are obviously the two most complex subjects as well. But once you have a grounding in these things, then you can go on to storytelling and the intricacies of comics. And for writers, read as many different kinds of books, etc. Form your own ideas, and of course read as many comics, manga, graphic novels as you can. Once you come from these angles and then you approach the subject as something to learn and to craft, your first story might not be very good, but most authors' first books are not very good. Just keep doing it. And one of the biggest dangers to all comic enthusiasts is, because they look like such fun, they're so engaging, most people think that as soon as they start to learn, everything should look kind of more correct. But it's like learning to play the piano. If you don't practice a lot to get to something like a grade 8 equivalent, probably never would happen. So it's a lot of hard work, but it's like anything. The harder you work at it, the more fun it becomes in the long run.
And speaking about fun, what advice would you give for aspiring artists, or even comic book enthusiasts?
The first piece of advice I would give is to collaborate. Don't be scared to collaborate. Work with other people. Work as an assistant. If someone can draw better than you, offer to ink for them. If you can write for free, you help someone produce a comic. Get something done and get something published. Once you have something published, editors know that you can be worked with. You can't be that difficult to converse with, to share ideas with. Once you get things like that under your belt, you're on the way. You're on the way to being a professional.
And speaking about being a great professional, thank you for joining us here at the National Critics' Choice. And it's been a real pleasure to have you on our show, Mr. Hinds.
Yes,
and thank you for joining us here at the National Critics' Choice, said with the Association of Comic Artists, with Jerry Hinds, who is the president here in Singapore. And till next time, I'm Robin Stienberg. Have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thanks.
That's